Our next guest is Cindy Lewis. Cindy Lewis is an author. She was born in Dayton, Ohio, grew up in the Fort Lauderdale and Miami area. She's a single mom with 3 sons, 1 daughter, and many grandchildren. She considers herself a bona fide beach bum with a twist. She enjoys reading as well as writing, and she has a passion for writing poetry as well. She looks forward to traveling the world. She hopes to share her readers stories of life, of dreams, and hope. You all remember that it's our dreams that get us out of bed each day. Talk about a true statement, and authors in general I love having on the program because, again, authors, filmmakers, such a talent. I've said it a couple times before. I'm trying to finish up a couple of books myself, and it takes its passion a little bit. Well, not a little bit, but it's an art to make it work, right, and especially to do books that that touch the heart. But without a doubt, a very true statement. It's our dreams that get us out of bed each day. Okay, without any further delay, let's go ahead and get Cindy on the line. Cindy, good evening. Welcome to Take K-Talk and the Fringe radio show.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for giving us some time out of your Saturday night on a weekend. And hopefully you're not in the midst of the horrible weather that's moving across the Midwest.
No, it's actually hot, almost like the Amazon here.
Really? Where are you located at, Cindy?
Just south of Tampa in the Bradenton, Palmetto area of Florida. We're on the West Coast.
Gotcha. Because I saw in the bio it talked about growing up in Dayton, Ohio, and I was looking at the weather map during the break, and I know right now through the Midwest they're just getting violent weather. Oklahoma's experienced horrific tornadoes, but I'm glad you're not in that area. But you're in that area that you get them major storms called hurricanes that can come through, which have to be quite scary.
I've been through a few of those, yes.
Anyway, Cindy, it's an honor to have you on the program. I just touched the surface a little bit of what you do, but how did you get into writing? And I'd like to talk about your books. What drew me, actually, I had received a couple of emails from some listeners to get you on the program. And second of all, something that I found so interesting is a lot of times we talk about the subject of ghost hunting and children. So many people are afraid to mix those things together when children are young. I think we're so protective as parents, we don't want to think about things, but I believe kids are innocent and they do see things. They're not corrupted by television and everything else. They're just kind of free at a young age. But tell me how you got into in your books, and I'd love to talk about your work tonight.
Sure. Well, my Charlie series, as I call it, started with a dream after I lost my parents. Well, my dad went first and then my mom, but I was very, very close to my dad, and I just, his loss for me triggered something in me that, okay, life comes and goes, and I've been writing and doing things for years but never doing anything about it, and it was time for me to get off of myself and start finishing things and putting them out there. And I do believe in ghosts. As they say in The Wizard of Oz, So, and I thought about bringing the kids on board because of my loss of my father, and I wanted to have an avenue to talk to kids about death and possibly the afterlife. And there's no avenue for kids to discuss a grandparent passing or a parent passing, and I think I threw that out there when I started the Charlie series. The original one was The Legend of Lily Rose, and she was a little girl that was accidentally murdered. I mean, it wasn't something that was done intentional, but she came back as a spirit, a ghost, as you want to call it, to help her mom and dad, go on with their life because They were struggling. And I just felt, hey, here's a big avenue. And then the more I did Lily Rose, the more I got thinking about history. And, I started talking to a lot of children and interacting with them a lot. And I found out kids don't talk about history either. And they know so little about history, whether it's in America or whether it's in, internationally. So I decided from the point that I finished Lily Rose that, each book after that was going to touch a piece of history, and the kids that were ghost hunting were going to meet ghosts in history and either help them resolve their issues or coexist with them, and that's what's kind of happened with the Charlie series.
Well, and my hat's off to you, because again, those I believe I totally agree with what you're saying. Young children, when a parent or especially a grandparent or a relative dies, I think they just don't understand what happens. I know when I was a little kid, when my grandmother, I was very young. I remember my father's mother passed away, and everybody was kind of, again, I was a young kid at the time, but telling me, well, grandma's going to sleep for a while, but she'll wake up again someday. And I think parents use a lot of these metaphors, and I think children need to know. I really do. And especially if children have some interest in it, and if there are children that I believe do see things, as I mentioned, you always hear about kids saying, little Bobby has got an imaginary friend, or Susie's got an imaginary friend. Maybe those little friends are not quite as imaginary as we think. Again, it's the innocence of children, no corruption. They're free thinkers. They haven't been dumped into everyday life, and I think they see things. I truly do.
Oh yes, I definitely believe that, and we just need to listen to them a little bit more. But they're afraid to ask questions, and we've kind of made it that way for them. And you wouldn't believe the response I get, and I was a little bit worried because anything south of the Mason-Dixon line, I'm in the Bible Belt, and I was worried about church and politics, and when you get into writing, they keep throwing at you, especially I'm my agent and the people that I'm starting to deal with at this point in my career. You have to keep thinking about the marketing aspect of everything that you do, but I had to keep sticking to my guns and say, this is the message that I want to say to the kids, and this is what I want to do, and you're either on board with it or you're not, and I'll help you with the marketing aspect. I'll throw in there the stuff that you want, but my message is for the kids, and I want to speak for them, and that's my goal basically with the Charlie series, and it's a never-ending thing for me, and I think I can just keep going on with it till my hand doesn't let me write anymore.
When you mentioned, I pulling some notes and stuff together, Cindy. You talked about you talk to a lot of children. And about their knowledge of history, I agree with that. I think we don't teach kids much about history, and I think I think it's a good thing to start introducing them to things, even like what hit on me. Of course, I'm a huge Titanic fan, and I know that one of your books I talked to you about that. You talk about Titanic.
Yes.
There's a lot of kids, they don't know what Titanic is. They find out about it maybe when they're 16 or 17. And then at that age, as myself and I'm sure and many others, you're in high school, history it's just another, you're getting so much thrown at you. You're trying to learn English, you're trying to learn math, algebra.
It's usually boring.
Right. It's boring, and it's just more, more blah, blah, blah. Then as we get older in life, history becomes more important, and especially when we dig into it and find out all the intricacies of it.
Well, I told myself I wasn't going to touch on history that was popular, and the Titanic certainly was very popular, and there's been so many movies done in regards to it, but the exhibit for the Titanic came through when I was working on the second book, Remember Me, The Boy Under the Tree, and I went with it with my daughter, and reading those people's names and seeing the artifacts and everything, it just was such an inspiration, and I just felt like they were talking to me to kind of enlighten on their story. I never give a lot away to the children in the books because that's a waste of time. You throw little pieces at them, and you get them asking questions, and that's where it all comes together, because if you give them too much, they're going to be overloaded and bored and walk away from it, and hey, I'm not going to do that, but you give them little pieces here and there, and that's what I did. I made it a haunted locket that was from the Titanic, and I brought ghosts from the second book thrown onto the Titanic and ended up helping. I have more than just ghost people. I have ghost animals in my books too, so kids can relate to animals and they can relate to people. So I just put that all in there and let them take what they will, and hopefully they're going to ask questions, or they're going to go to the library and read a couple more books, or they're going to look it up online. It's a challenge to get kids to go in the libraries anymore, or to simply sit down and read.
Well, it is, and you know, one thing, and there's very few authors doing it, but there are some that are coming up, like subjects of Titanic. There's a lot of adult authors that I don't think want to write children's books. They want to write the technical books. You know, they want to do the big books that the adults the adult community is gonna buy. But again, I think children need to learn about history, and to have a book that's on their level, I think, is very important on many things. I think even on subjects, some may say, oh, well, you're crazy, but even on subjects such as 9/11, these are horrific events that have happened, and I think children, gently and carefully, I'll preface it with that, need to be exposed to that, at least when they hear about 9/11. And all the we could talk for hours about all the things that surround it as far as religion and religious beliefs and politics. I think really and truly educating children at a very young age and just slowly feeding it to them, I think, is a good thing, and I think more kids need that.
I've been asked a lot to pin something on the 9/11, but for me, it's still too early, really, to bring in some ghosts that might have been affected from 9/11, whether they're fictitious or not. It's really close to home, and it's a close time for us at the moment. And I may pin something down the road. I've got a whole list of history stuff, and my list keeps growing, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately. But I may, when my heart feels right about it, I may pin something on 9/11 for the kids, but I'm not sure about that yet. I'm having a hard time with that myself, and I can imagine how the kids think about it.
Well, but I agree. It's a touchy subject, and again, my hat's off to you that you address these subjects and at least consider it. Some people wouldn't even want. I mean, there's people that shield their kids from stuff like that. They say, well, I've got a friend that's got young kids as well. 9/11 was a terrible day, and the kids say, well, why was it terrible? They just don't know. They just don't understand. And I think if on some of these subjects, if they can be prepped a little bit, at least have some knowledge or a little bit of a foundation that they can understand, I think they're a little more accepting to it.
Right. And I tell you, in talking to the children, I go to the library a lot, and I'll sit and talk to the kids, and I'm very careful because I don't want to be sitting at the library talking to a group of children, and the parents start looking at me like, why is that woman sitting there talking to my kids? But I'm out and about a lot, and there's a lot of places that I go, and I interact with the children. And some of the places they go, they know who I am, and they're following me now because of the books. But I was very surprised when I mentioned pieces of history, just in my own, going down my list, and out of 20 kids, none of the kids knew what the Trail of Tears was. And I'm like, really? Seriously? You've never heard of the Trail of Tears? And of course, I live in Florida, and when I did book 4, I was talking about pirates. Yes, they knew about pirates, but they couldn't name any except for Blackbeard. There was a whole list of pirates they didn't know anything about. So, there's a lot about, we're training kids to take tests. We're not training kids to understand our history, whether it's here or abroad.
Right. No, I can't agree with you more. The books. Now, let me ask you this, Cindy: are the books, they're children's books? Are they designed for children to read them, or are they designed for a parent to read them to a child, or a little bit of both?
Well, when I started out, I was hitting the early teens, 5th, 6th grade on up into middle school, and that's basically where the niche has been found for them. But I've also had parents and adults that have read my books, and they're like, wow, where did you come up with this? And so they have smaller children, and they've started reading to the books to them. And I was amazed at the adults. I have an adult following now for my children's series. And, I'm luckily for me, having 4 children, I've had so many experiences that I can get down on their level, and when I write, I can think about it at their level. But it also appeals to the adults because of the simplicity, and I don't go on for pages and pages and descriptions of things that nobody wants to know anything about. It's just a story, and it leads you off into many different places, and then it brings you back. And I'm always surprised at myself how I interact with the ghosts and the people and the kids, because I've been truly blessed with being able to have the imagination. Starting a book, that's the toughest. Finding your ending, because my books all connect together.
Right.
And my ending on one book leads right into the next one, and that's pretty tough. And believe me, I write for adults too, so it's like a switch that goes off in my head, and I bring myself down to the kids' level. But everything I do and everything that I write, I actually see it almost as watching a movie. So
Really?
I've been very blessed with that, yes.
So you get kind of a vision for your work, if you want to call it that.
Oh, yes. It's like I know the kids. The kids, Charlie was the main character, and he lost his parents. And basically, he lives with his grandfather, and he wanted to speak to his parents one more time. And through that, he started ghost hunting with his friends. And thank God I used to watch all the ghost hunting shows, Most Haunted, Zach Bagans, Grant, and Jay. Those gave me the tools with which to communicate with the children on their level, taking flashlights out of their dad's toolbox. And one kid, his father works on air conditioners, so he took the temperature gauge. It gave me the avenues in which to let the kids go and do these crazy things. And it's been quite the adventure interacting with them and the ghosts and their visions and everything that they see. So it's been fun.
Do you do any ghost hunting or paranormal research yourself?
Yes, I actually have. I have quite a bit of equipment, and I've taken my granddaughter. She's the picture that you posted on there. I've drug her to cemeteries and places that are supposed to be haunted, and my daughter. And we've had fun, and it's about communication, and it's always having an open line of communications with the kids. My adult children, they might have believed in ghosts at one time or another, but as they've had their families and everybody's busy, some of that goes away. Your childhood goes away. I don't think I've ever lost my childhood or the hunt. Luckily for me, I had a very outgoing, adventurous father, and he just kept at it. You want something, you get it. When you want to do something, you do it. And so with him instilling that in me, I'll chase ghosts until I can't chase them anymore, and you'll probably find a few of them in my book.
That again, the whole subject of the paranormal, it tends to scare a lot of people, and I've even had I'm sure in Florida you have a couple of those type of things too, but here in Utah we've had a few of the paracons, and some people won't even take their kids to that. They'll have interest, but they like, well, I won't subject my kid to that, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that introducing them to that at a young age, I believe, takes a lot of that fear factor out. We grew up. I grew up, at least, to be afraid of those type of things. And then but once you understand something, the fear is no longer there.
Well, I had an unusual childhood. My father was the adventurous. He had an airplane, motorcycles, and he built me homemade go-karts, and I was very blessed with him just putting everything out there for me. And then my mom, I never brought many kids home because my mom was an oddity. My mother, the reason why the paranormal was so big with me growing up was my mom. She said and did things that I never understood until later. And like she'd say, go answer the phone. And I'd look at her and I'd look at the phone. The phone wasn't ringing, and then all of a sudden it would ring. So I had an unusual childhood, which I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people that didn't have those kind of childhood, but it left me open to a lot of questions, And as I grew older, some of the things she said and did now, when I think back on it, that's popular now. But my mom tried to hide a lot of it, and I guess I was blessed because there's a lot of parents that won't even talk to their kids about ghosts, but I was fortunate enough to see the bigger picture.
Do your books address that a little bit? Do they, I mean, I would assume that they do, even if it's a little bit subliminally.
Well, what happened was with Lily Rose, she was frustrated in the beginning because nobody could see her, so she was doing little things, you know, Twinkies flying through the air and the kids chasing Twinkies going through a field, and they couldn't see her at first. But when I believe that when you accept the fact and believe with all your heart that there's things out there that you can't explain, sometimes it comes to you. And what happened in the books was the kids started seeing the ghosts, and then they started helping the ghosts, and it just opened up a whole can of what can you do, and do you believe, and yes, there's magic in the world, and, you know, a lot of it comes from within, but I left that open for them. There's times when they don't see ghosts, you know, I put in there, too, that there's some ghosts that don't want to be seen. There's good ghosts and bad ghosts. And, you know, you have to have the differential for the kids so that they can understand. Because, you know, they see some things on TV that are such negative things about ghosts. And you want to present, especially the little kids in the 5th and 6th graders, you want to present something that they can understand and not necessarily accept, but maybe think about a little bit more. So, yeah, I did put it in there where the kids could see the ghost eventually, and it's worked out pretty well for me as far as the storylines and stuff.
What do you think about the reality shows, Cindy? Do you think that they've helped? I don't want to call it a hobby because I don't. First of all, to me, paranormal research is not a hobby. I've been honored to talk to so many different paranormal researchers, and of course, there's the curiosity there. But so many of them here, at least in the Salt Lake City area that we've had in the studio, they're trying to help people. They don't get paid a nickel for it. They buy all their own stuff. There's people that reach out that say, hey, I've got something weird going on in my house, and maybe it is a faulty light switch, or maybe it is something that that could be taken care of. But it seemed like with the shows and what have you, initially it kind of introduced people to the science of paranormal research, but now it's kind of, I don't know, it seems like some of these shows they're this side of Keeping Up with the Kardashians with all the drama and stuff.
They're trying to stage a lot of the stuff nowadays, which I've lost kind of interest in some of the shows in the last few years because of that, because I don't want to feel like I'm sitting there watching something that's staged just for the benefit of a show.
Right.
I loved it when they did it live. Most Haunted was a little unique for me because they brought in the mediums that were talking to the ghosts as they were doing their ghost hunting, and I sat there when I'd watch the shows, and I'm like, I really, really hope that this is true and coming from their heart doing these shows, because it's so important to not put the fake out there. You know, there's people that need to understand that it is for real. And, I totally agree about a lot of that, but it's starting to really lack, and they're starting to flood them. I was scared when I did the Charlie series, when I put it Charlie and the Ghost Hunters, because I'm thinking, oh, God, they're going to think it's just another ghost hunt. And I didn't want it to come across as that way, because how many times can you do a ghost hunt in one location?
Right.
You know,
Right.
They've all done it. They keep doing it, and you can go from one ghost show to the other, and they're all hunting at the same places. And it's like, please, go find something original now.
Right.
So
right.
that's my input on the shows. And don't get me wrong, I love those guys. You know, they gave me what I needed, and they entertained me for years. And I hope they go back to the drawing table and start getting original again.
I would love to see some younger people get involved with it. We had, matter of fact, at the time we had her on the show, I think she was 14 or 15, but Cassidy Ray, who is a ghost hunter, She was part of a paranormal team. Actually started building a little bit of celebrityism, I guess, if that's a word I can use. She was on a couple of different programs on the cable networks, and her parents encouraged her. She had an interest in it from a very young age, and her parents encouraged her to follow it. And I think that's a good thing. I think that introducing young people to it, like you introducing your granddaughter to it, I think it's a good thing. I really do. It takes the fear out, and I think it maybe prepares them for the future. I kind of think, I've said it many times, and I think a lot of people feel that way. Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but maybe some big changes are coming or need to come. And maybe people of the planet, maybe people are not going to be so skeptical. Maybe we'll all see something here in the not-too-distant future that may change our lives forever, may change history.
Well, scientists keep telling us we only use, 2% of our brain, and that's why we can't see the big picture.
Yeah.
And I believe that's true. And I believe that a lot of times you're blocked from seeing the real picture because that's what you're taught growing up.
Right.
It's been proven over and over again. And I hope I open a few doors and entertain at the same time. It's all for a good goal, and it's all for the kids, and I'm having fun doing it. So it's a blessing.
Well, no, and again, to be able to communicate with children, that's a talent, because it's hard to talk to kids. It really is. I mean, think about. I look at it sometimes, and I'm not saying that. I don't want to say that parents have bad relationships with children, but I know so many parents that have kids, and all it is it's not about relating to the kids. It's nothing but screaming at them all the time. And to address some of these subjects and have the patience and the know-how and the correct approach to be able to talk to these subjects to young kids, that takes a talent. So, again, my hat's off to you that you've succeeded with that and keep it rolling and keep it moving forward.
Well, life's tough now. Life is very, very tough right now in this world because nowadays, both parents have to work, or it's a single-family home, and the resources aren't available. The time's not available anymore for the children, and they're raising themselves, and they're entertaining themselves.
You hit it right on the head. You did.
Yeah.
And these kids of today, and I know it's tough, and like you said, things have really changed. I think families and home lives they've changed 180 degrees. The days of dad getting home at 5 o'clock and dinner on the table and the family sitting down watching TV. I don't think that happens much because, first of all, it's a competitive world. Most parents that have a decent job are putting in 12 hours a day, and they're traveling, and it's just they're lucky enough to get a bite to eat together, watch a little TV, get the kids in bed, and have it all start over again. And again, I even believe, like with the internet and social media, I think it's all a great thing. But some of these kids, that's all they want to do. Get home from school, get on Facebook, get on Twitter, start texting. They need to get out and breathe some air and take a look at life because there's so much to offer out there.
Yeah, this is true. And it's going to get tougher because technology's taken over. It's not going to get any simpler. There's not going to be an easy fix. And it's going to be up to us creative folk to put a little blend in the mix and bring down reality to what it is. And
exactly.
I'm hoping to do that more and more in my books. I'm actually starting another series.
Welcome back to Fringe Radio. Our guest tonight for this hour, author Cindy Lewis. Again, Cindy, thank you so much for taking time out of your Saturday night to be here with us.
You're welcome.
I got a couple questions that came in for you, and I was going to post them both up to you. These are both from one of our good listeners out on the East Coast. Bob writes in and says, has Cindy ever had a personal paranormal event?
Yes, several, as a matter of fact. I actually lived in a haunted house for many years. It was so haunted that even the cats that we had wouldn't come in the house. Lights going off and on, appliances turning off and on at will, doors shutting. Yeah, I've experienced it, and I believe it. Yes.
Kind of scary stuff or interesting stuff?
It bothered me because the cats wouldn't come in the house. They'd just sit at the door and look in. You'd open the door, and they just would turn and walk away.
Wow.
it was not normal behavior for them. Scary, yes, because one time I was at work and my mother called and said, "Why aren't you opening the door?" I've been beating on the door for 5 minutes. She goes, "I see you walking around upstairs in the window." And I wasn't home. Nobody was home. And that was just one of the instances, had people come and check out the house thinking maybe somebody broke in, but there was nobody there.
Well, that's when you actually have people seeing things going on. Did you ever dig into the history of the home at all to see what?
The house was very old, and I really never. That was actually before I started doing any paranormal investigating. So no, I didn't do any investigating into that particular home.
Wow. Now, was that in the Dayton area?
No, actually, that was in a little town called Dade City, Florida, north of here, about an hour and a half. It was a very old home, and other people had told me about after we had, moved out of the place that they'd had experiences there too. So I'm sure there'd been some things going on there as well.
Some crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's now. Like you wrote with your one book where you addressed Titanic. Of course, I can never get enough of that subject. It's just, to me, it's so interesting. In writing the book, did you do a lot of digging into historical stuff, or did you just use it as a platform and then introduced your characters onto it?
I did a lot of digging. Like I said, I went to the exhibit. I read a lot about the people that were on the Titanic. But when you're writing fiction, you can go so far, but then you got to pull back a little bit. And by attaching a haunted locket with a ghost and bringing ghosts from the future to the past and back to the future again, put a little bit of a twist on the Titanic. And I had to give this person the resolve that she needed from the locket being as haunted as it was. Mm-hmm. But it was interesting to bring the facts. I used some of the detail from the ship because, and I had the manifest. I bought the manifest list and the passenger list and everything from the Titanic. So I had a lot to work with, and I knew what they were carrying on the ship. So I put some of that into the book.
I've never seen a Titanic exhibit. I've been to Vegas. Well, we're not that far from Las Vegas. I've been down to Vegas, but I've never made it to the one at the Luxor. But everybody that I've talked to that said they've seen that exhibit, it's just amazing. Especially if you get one where you can, where they have pieces of the steel hull and you can touch it. It's just amazing to see that.
Yeah, what brought it home to me was the artifacts of the personal belongings. There was a lot of that, briefcases, clothing, seeing all the dishes and all the ware from the Starline ship, but you didn't feel the same as when you were sitting there looking at an old antique razor, because you know that had touched someone's face, and here it was, they found it on the bottom of the ocean floor. So yeah, it was, and it's a very weird, I don't know if weird's a good word, but an eerie feeling when you're walking through those exhibits and there's so much personal belongings there.
Right. Well, it brings the reality of the tragedy home. It's I think that just like with so many tragedies, even now 9/11 I think is starting to turn that way. We start looking more at the scientific piece of it. And I believe like the movies, the films and documentaries James Cameron has done, of course, with his movie. And then, he's I don't know how many, I think he's dived on Titanic 35 or 45 times, and he's brought the PBS and Nova specials,
right, I've seen them.
Yeah, and they're amazing, but it's strictly the scientific side of it, and it takes the human element out. But when you go to that exhibit, like you said, when you see those people's personal belongings, that throws that human element back in, and that hits home.
Well, from the moment my character put her foot on that plank and walked aboard the ship, I gave the readers kind of a little tour. So I did that as my salute to the people that were on the Titanic, and I hope in retrospect, looking back on it, that I didn't ruin the effect of it.
Right. So. Do kids when you discuss subjects like Titanic with young kids, is there interest there? I mean, do they have interest in that?
I actually, no, I was surprised at the fact because they've seen the Cameron movie and they've seen her. The only thing they reply about is her standing at the bow of the boat, or the stern. Is it the bow or the stern of the boat? You know, with her arms in the air.
Right.
That's the only comments I get from the children is that, and then of course they talk about them freezing to death in the water, and because this is a water state, you know, kids have a hard time understanding that yes, there could be ice in the water and you could freeze to death. Those were the questions I were getting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's not too many children that know too much about anything regards to whether it's the Titanic or any part of history, and it's sad.
What other, well, first of all, for our listeners that are listening, our listeners out there, where can they get your books at? Where can they buy these books at for their own children?
They're available on Amazon. If you just type in Charlie and the Ghost Hunters, the whole series. Right now there's 5 books available. My last book that came out was about the Alamo. I touched on that subject a little bit because my Charlie series is based out of a little town in Tennessee, Crossville, Tennessee. It's not too small, but it's not too big. And a lot of the Tennesseans went to and fought at the Alamo, and that's why I touched base on that little aspect of Tennessee and where the kids live. So they helped a boy get home from the Alamo that actually died there. So, yeah, I don't make it too complex. You have to let the kids understand it and ask questions to learn.
Sure.
So, yeah, they can go to Amazon. They can just type in the series, and it'll pop up there. Believe me, there's a lot of Cindy Lewis's out there, and I was quite surprised at how many of them are authors. So just type in the series name.
I found that, too. What other work are you doing, Cindy? What other things do you have going on in the works?
Well, I do write adult books, too. I'm really good at comedy. I wrote a romantic comedy called Almost India. I just started a new series. I'm almost done with book 1, and the series is going to be called The Secret Book of Realms. The first book's going to be called The City of Dragons, and I have talk about going sci-fi. I have flipped the coin on that one on this series. So it's going to be very entertaining for the kids, young adults, and I hope the adults enjoy it too, but I've really stuck my neck out on this one because I just think the imagination's a terrible thing to waste, and that's an old cliche, but Lord, does it really mean something when you're writing and trying to keep the interest and keep people reading. So that's what I'm trying to do.
Well, you know, go ahead.
I have a little twist on all my books. Every book starts with a poem. The first thing I pen for each story, when I know the title, usually the titles come to me first, but when I know the title, all of a sudden there's a poem. And from that poem, the story begins. And that's kind of like my signature with my books is a poem. And that's how I'm going to do from here on out, because kids don't know what poetry is, and I've introduced all these little characters, and there's a poem that goes with it, and I hope that it inspires some kids to either write or do poetry. It would be fabulous because they don't do that much anymore.
Well, and it's so tough. I've got a couple of books that I've half started. They're fun, simple reads, and they actually address. I don't want to say they're similar to what you're doing, but maybe I could say they're similar to what you're doing, but instead of using ghost hunting, we put UFOs and ufology in there. Kind of just some fun stuff. That's all.
Well, that's another love. So.
Yeah, and it's so difficult. I mean, it's a talent to be able to write. I'd like to get these done, and I would say that they're done to some degree. But I've tried different methods, everything from trying to write the story from the end to the beginning, trying to storyboard the book a little bit. It's my hat's off to people that try to write books and have successful series because it's a lot of work. It really is. And if you have the talent.
I have notes. I take notes. I used to do it the hard way, wrote it out by pen and then would type it up. now I just keep a notebook handy so that I can go back and check my notes. But my biggest secret is I pick out a piece of music that fits me for that particular book. And when I'm writing, I'm listening to that music. And even though I listen to it over and over again, that's my book. That's my music for that book. And it actually gets me from point A to point B listening to that particular CD while I'm writing a book. And because you have to, when you're channeling to write, and that's how I term it, is channeling, you have to cut out the whole outside world. You can't hear the car going down the street. When I'm writing, I don't hear that. I hear the music, but I could almost write with my eyes closed because I am seeing that book as I write it, and that's my secret, and that's how I get from the beginning to the end. You know, you can do the beginning and the end really fine, okay, but all that in between has to come together. It all has to make sense, and it all has to be interesting, and that's the secret to writing.
Gotcha. Very interesting. We've got a few minutes left. I was looking at your notes that you sent me. Now, you write for a magazine in Seoul, Korea? Is that correct?
Yes, it's called Electro.com, and it's about an American's point of view about Seoul, Korea. And I've never been to Seoul, but I have a huge passion for Seoul, Korea, the culture, and I've had a couple of dreams that started me on that journey talking about Seoul. It took me a while to figure out that it was Seoul that I was looking for through the dream that I had, but I started writing these articles about food and what you would experience because the food there is so different and the music's different, and I've talked to a lot of, they call them expats, that's people that are over there that are not native, and their experience is living over there. So I started writing that, and it's been pretty popular. But I also teach a couple of little kids over there English on Skype, and I've just enjoyed the heck out of it.
Oh, wow. That sounds like it's a lot of fun.
It is. It's hard to keep 5, 6, and 7-year-olds still for an hour, and I started penning little stories for them, and I send them the little stories, and I read to them first, and then they read back to me, and that's how they're learning English. English is the second nature, the second language over there. And they want the kids to know it. And my writing in the magazine got me these little, hey, would you help me, get my kids to understand English a little better? And I've loved doing it. It's been a lot of fun. And that's going to be the first place my feet touch when I get the opportunity to go over there.
Sounds like I've never been to Asia or the the Far East, but it looks like it's a beautiful place. It can be looks like it could be kind of a little bit of a dirty place, a crowded place, but so much different than what we're used to here in the United States.
I want to see the palaces.
Oh yeah,
I really do.
The work is just beautiful. The construction is beautiful.
Yeah, I have my bucket list, and it's getting bigger, but I hope to someday, check them all off. And my biggest goal is I want to start a nonprofit organization for children. I want to have a place where either by the internet or by the phone that if there's children that are struggling, somewhere they can call, somebody that can find the avenues in which to help them. And that's my goal with all my writings and my children's books and my adult books. It's always going to be for the kids, the voice of the children.
Well, again, it's somebody that's just there to listen to them, because that's the most important thing, I think, in life, is that we don't listen. Well, I shouldn't say we, but so many people don't listen to their children. Cindy, the hour's gone too fast, but I want to thank you so much for taking the time to come here. And again,
thank you.
The books, your website, again, is cindylewis.com. People go check it out.
Cindy Lou Lewis.
Cindy Lou Lewis. Okay, Cindy
Yeah.
Lou Lewis. Okay. And they can find your books on Amazon. And
Yes.
I'd like to stay in touch with you and see what you have coming down the road.
That'd be great. I look forward to it.
Well, thank you again for giving us time on a Saturday night. It was an honor to have you on the show. Good luck with what you're doing. And I love that line of remember that it's our dreams that get us out of bed each day. That is so true.
Yes, it is, Pat. And thank you for having me.
Okay, take care and enjoy your weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.